So I didn't want to make this talk walk vlog today. It's not supposed to be the case at all.
So the Explorer II was always one of those watches that I never thought I would be interested in. Never thought I would like it, right? So I had the chance to get it in the past and I just passed on it. The size, the fixed brush steel bezel, I just thought it's too wide for my wrist. I just didn't get it. I say this and I absolutely enjoyed and still enjoy my Explorer 1. That is of course the reference 214270 in 39mm case, because once again the size for me was a big factor and 39 always speaks to me, right? So the 226570 was released in 2021 and silently also marking the 50th anniversary for the Explorer II. Watch enthusiasts, collectors, I think even my next door neighbor who cares less about watches speculated that it'll come in a ceramic bezel in 2021. So people thought it's the right way for Rolex to modernize a little bit, but guess what? Rolex didn't want to mess with that design. They just had to stick with it. In fact, very little has changed. Rolex wanted to keep this utilitarian look. The current white and black 226570s look remarkably like the white and black 216570 that came out a decade ago. I'm also the guy that prefers 40 to 41mm case sizes, so the discontinued 40mm, so that's not the previous version, that's the version before that, would have been my go-to case. But something about this new 42mm Explorer II that just works for me, right? It works perfect. But then the look, the feel, the price point as well is not something to forget, made it very difficult for me to pass on this watch.
I mean, it was always a watch that I looked at and I was like, yeah, it's too big, it's too wide, it's too plain, it's too boring, the bezel doesn't rotate. But then I got it in my hands, right? And this is when, yeah.
Let's get into it. So I started off absolutely crazy about collecting Rolex steel watches, and then I took somewhere in the middle, like a really hard curve, into precious metals, right? And specifically the classics. That's what I've been talking about for the past couple of videos. I was basically blinded by how gold watches are more elegant and classy than those that are made in stainless steel, which makes it very hard to go back to stainless steel watches after you've wearing gold watches. But then you also can't deny that stainless steel watches are generally more sporty and robust. Royal Oak, of course, excluded. We're not talking about that. You can't deny the satisfaction you get when you pay $9,000 for a stainless steel watch that you can absolutely use for everything without being worried. When I say everything, I mean literally everything. This is what the Explorer II is, much more affordable than precious metal, not as versatile as the steel Submariner in terms of aesthetics, but again you get that orange GMT accent hand, something that you can associate more with sportiness over the Submariner as well as casualness. I know this is a little bit outside of the context, but if you ask me today, do gold watches have a place in a watch collector's collection? Did I say that right? Watch collector collection. Answer is absolutely yes. You know, but then they're not necessarily a go-to do everything anytime type of watch, like this Explorer II. The safe bet of this 9K option from Rolex is the latest iteration of the Explorer II that came out in 2021. The reference is 226570 and lives in this 42mm oyster case that you might think is too big if you prefer 39 to 41mm case sizes. I can't believe that I'm saying this considering I like 40mm, maybe maximum 41 case sizes, but it feels like this 42 works for this Explorer. I think it's the right size for it actually. It sits right on the wrist because it's relatively thin, even a hair thinner than the previous gen. 12.5mm to be exact is what you get with this new Explorer II. So the prospect of upgrading to this 2.2 reference, if you own the 2.1 reference, the one right before that, is absolutely pointless. But if you are in the market for an Explorer, this reference will offer you a narrower tapering of the lugs and slightly wider oyster bracelet. The bracelet, by the way, is now also 22mm at its widest point rather than 21mm. So the relationship between the narrower lugs and wider bracelet provides what feels like a much more elegant transition, in my opinion, for this Explorer, which is a standard design language for the Explorer II. However, even though it sits on a 42mm case, it doesn't feel or look big or bulky at 42mm is what I'm trying to say. The dial is more legible and definitely intended to be used in low light conditions. Chromalight displays have been enhanced for longer luminosity in dark conditions and appears brighter in the light. So getting this new reference basically means you get a much more functional bracelet, but in the same time you also have the ease of use of the 0.5mm adjustment that you get on the clasp. But this is something you can tick in. You can also move it around, right? So there is 3 pins you can screw it out and place it in a middle pin or the one on top, for example. But generally you get the free use of a 0.5mm adjustment on this bracelet, which I think is a nice add-on to the Explorer 2s. Now, whether it's hot, humid, you're sitting in a long flight, this Explorer definitely has you covered. Overall, the proportions for this new Explorer are right. Rolex has iterated this second version of this 42mm Explorer 2 to the extent that a comparison to the McQueen Explorer is less relevant, although it would be nice to do that. Let me know if you want to see this comparison in the comment section down below. I'd be more than happy to do it. There's definitely a big fan base for the Explorer 2 for those who get it, for those who understands Rolex's intention for keeping this brushed fixed bezel on it, this original look, this attitude of go do anything with the watch type of thing is really the design language of the Explorer 2. Yeah, I'm just waking up to it, I guess. And from what I'm seeing and hearing, the polar dial, of course, is the preference over the black. However, what jumps out to me about the black is the hour marker, minutes, and 24-hour hands that are all now, of course, in white gold. On the other hand, the polar version, you'll notice that the hands appear less glossy, and then the contrast, of course, of the orange on black, to me, stands out more than the polar white. That's just my thinking. Overall, the new movement, the bracelet adjustment, bracelet proportion, and even the price point is not something that would make you want to upgrade if you own the previous reference, because you won't even notice the difference. You'll barely see them. But then again, it makes also a very compelling reason to get into this new reference of the Explorer 2 as your first Rolex ever. That also worked. And in my opinion, that's what I think brands should follow through with. Create a design language that makes the end user want to consider a version in a model range, right? So if you get the previous 2.1 reference of the Explorer 2, you don't want to or need to upgrade to the 2.2 reference because the changes are very small. It's such small changes that get you to question whether it's worthwhile to jump on the next immediate release. Of course, this is what I would tell myself. I'm just mad like that. Rolex mastered the strategy. We've seen it with the Submariner releases, same watch, they moved it from 40 to 41mm. We've seen it with the GMT, BLRO, and BLNR, adding it on an Oyster bracelet, giving you that additional option that, you know what, it's not just in Jubilee, it's the same exact watch, it's the same exact movement, it's just on an Oyster bracelet. But the question is it really worthwhile considering it's the same watch with small changes? I don't know. But then you quickly acknowledge that you really don't care for an upgraded movement. So the question that presents itself, is it worth upgrading to an identical watch or not? And that's good. That's very good for Rolex as a business because it may help them even out the demand a little bit. Not even even out, but somehow satisfy more people. And it's also good for you because it means it's a quicker fulfillment, right? And let's just say that you can't get it at retail for whatever reason. You don't have a purchase history or an existing relationship with an AD that you deal with because you're basically a normal human being that buys 2 to 3 watches every few years. And if you're not able to get it, as I said, from your AD for those reasons, then guess what? You also have a second chance from the aftermarket because the premiums on these Explorer 2s are not far away from retail. We're talking about $12,000 to $13,000, maybe even less right now. So it's within reality, it's not going to break the bank and you can still get this watch, especially when you compare it to something. I mean, look at AP, right? A stainless steel Royal Oak starts at $33,000 and that is just the retail price. It goes for an inflated aftermarket price for up to $123,000. I mean, who pays this? It's really out of the world. Like, I mean, forget about the watch and the collectability, park all that stuff on the side. Like, this is just an honest question. Like, this is something I think about and I hope I have the liberty to ask you guys. How could you go and justify $123,000 spend for a stainless steel watch that retails for $33,000? I mean, that is already the peak. And say you go ahead and do that, right? So you go and buy this watch. How could you not think about it as a investment? Because it is. Like, you know, this price is already high. This is like the peak of the premiums, right? You know, it's a volatile investment too because no one's buying these watches. No one's paying these premiums. And that's also hurting the brand without them realizing it because what happens is your experience is now completely different. You go to the boutique, the salesperson's head is even 10 million times bigger because he knows these watches are completely unattainable, or at least they're trying to make it sound or look that way. And he thinks he owns your life now, right? So that's far away from the brand's message. The brand wants to help you, but the representative, the people at least I've encountered, right, is going to have to disrespectfully profile you because he controls that wait list. You know, I'm going to put you into that wait list so I control you, and I'm going to make sure I ask you everything you do in your life, whether it be your job, you know, what do you do? Who are you married to? All of these details basically in order to say, yes, I'll put you in a wait list. That is for a watch that costs $33,000 at retail, right? A watch that you can't wear. There is no fun in it whatsoever. A watch that will really wear you. Let me ask you something honestly. Let's say we all stop buying APs. Well, not APs, just the Royal Oak specifically. That is the only successful model line, right? Let's say we stop buying that today. And that is a fact, by the way. That's why the prices in the aftermarket are actually going down for these watches. No one one's buying them, right? But let's say we all stop doing that, right? Would you still consider paying $33,000 for a nice bracelet? Because that's what it is to me. It's a bracelet. It's not a watch. It's not comfortable, not comparable quality to what you would get from Vacheron, Patek, or Lange. And on top of all, they're not reliable. So where is the value and the fun in that? I know I drifted a little bit, but what I'm trying to say is that the $9K retail price point for this Explorer 2 is just right. It's not bad. The $12,000 or $11,000, $13,000, whatever it is today, is also not a bad aftermarket price to pay for it. It's not scary, right? It's not going to break the bank, and that's how it should be. It should be fun. It should be something that you're able to afford, but most importantly, it should be something that, you know, is not going to get you to question whether this is a bad buy or not solely on the price factor, because it's not. Yeah, if you're talking function, you get it in this watch. If you're talking about a playful watch, you get it in this watch, and you get it for a very good price. Let me know in the comment section down below, how do you feel about everything that I said? Let me know what you think about this Explorer 2. I would love to go through your comments. Don't forget to subscribe, turn on the notification bell, and I'll catch you guys on the next one. Take care.